When you took silk, did you apply many times?
I applied 3 times, and the third time I was virtually told by Murray Gleeson, then the President of the Bar Association, to apply, because it was becoming the era where family law was not just a wrong thing to do and only the ladies should do it, men no. It was becoming a very wealthy jurisdiction. So he suggested that I do, because this was the era when Malcolm Brune came and me and others. And it was necessary because family law got recognition, which it still has today.
It's more needed than ever, really, human nature being what it is. Although, actually, I have been wanting to ask you, since the Family Law Act, which, as you mentioned earlier, your father in many ways, it owes a great deal to your father and his work, have things improved? It's a very loaded question, and I know you can't answer it in a succinct sort of way, probably, because where would you draw the line? But generally, looking back and knowing what you know.
Well, I'll take the coward's way out. I haven't been in practice for 4 or 5 years, and then I was a judge for 15 years before that. So I'm not as familiar with the bar, except watching them before me. But I think it has gone along that way. There's a lot more to it, and it's a lot harder, I think, because we're in tough times at the moment.
Yes, of course, there has been a lot of adverse publicity about the family court in recent years. Perhaps there always has been, I don't know. Again, you're from your vantage point, you could look at it and take a more seasoned view, I imagine.
Oh, yes. Nobody wanted to be appointed to the family court bar because it was a disgrace. David Selby, who was the first chief judge, was a wonderful man, an absolute gentleman, and they deliberately selected him for those reasons. He was a most proper, from Jewish background. He had all of that, and he was so suave on the bench and conducted his court with absolute decorum. And they were doing that sort of thing. I mean, Bill Davey, young Bill Davey, is a bit of a rogue, but Ken Pawley was also a top gentleman. And that was important. And Elizabeth Evatt brought prestige to it also. She was somebody, not just by the family name. She herself was extremely learned, not as good an organiser as perhaps you'd like, so she left that to Ken Pawley and others. But she was a figurehead. She brought in innovations. They were well-based because she's a supremely intelligent person.
Yes, it's interesting. You never were approached yourself to head up the Family Court of Australia?
I was not to be heading of it, but to be appointed there. And I thought about it because I thought this is the only way I'm going to get on the bench. And then Peter Hughes went Liberal Attorney General, he said, would you like to go on the district court? And that's just what I wanted. I thought to spend the rest of my life doing family law disputes would make me go gaga. And I was thrilled to be able to go back to crime, do plenty of the old civil cases that I used to do, but more importantly, have an all-round interest in the law. But it reminds me, a solicitor just ahead of me, Don McLaughlin, was appointed. He'd been an insurance company defendant solicitor. He knew very little about advocacy and even less about crime. Anyhow, the day came when the Chief Judge said, look, you've got to get into this, you've got to do some criminal work. So he was terribly frightened when he sat in his first case and he said to someone, what do I do? Just say, yes, Mr. Prosecutor, and the prosecutor will tell you what to do. So that's what he did forevermore.